Sound design.
Okay, so how do you set crossover filters in the field and then find an alignment that works? That is the challenge that I was faced with when I went out to help a friend of mine at this church here in Minneapolis. We had this JBL speaker and this RCF speaker, and if you've ever tried to do this kind of work, you know that it can be tricky to try to pair two speakers from different manufacturers, different generations. This speaker is quite old. It's been serviced, and I think its drivers were replaced at some point. And it is a passive speaker. It's got an amp rack back here. And then this is a more modern powered sub. Then it has a preset. So we have to figure out how to combine these two things. Okay, so over here in Crosslight, I've got my main here. Okay, there's my main in red. And then here's my sub. And my sub already has some pretty steep filters on it, so I don't want to mess with it too much. So all I need to figure out how to do is find the right high pass filter for my main and then the alignment to make this all work. Okay, so step one, take the measurements. I just want to mention this because I see people doing this in the field sometime, and this is the room that we're in. Let me zoom out here. If you are trying to do your measurement way out here somewhere, you're going to make this job really hard on yourself. I've tried to do this a bunch of times, and I remember measuring out in the field and thinking, I don't know what to do. But it really wasn't my fault. I just didn't know that you're not supposed to look at noisy data when you do this stuff. So, if possible, get up close and personal with the speakers so you can really get high quality, actionable data with high coherence. So what we did was we put a microphone stand on this table 1.2 meters away from this guy, and then we put another microphone on the ground 1.2 meters away from this guy. So then we had exact same distances for our mics, and then we just make sure that in Smart, our delay locators were exactly matched. This made it really easy to go back and forth and take solo measurements and make sure that everything is working. And this is what you have to do if the system is already installed and you can't take it down, measure outside, measure in your warehouse, something like that. So I'm talking about this kind of specific situation where the system is already installed and you're doing some kind of upgrade or you're doing some kind of alignment. What do you do if your speaker is already way up in the air? Well, you might have to do something like this. This is another church installation, and I tried to take a measurement down on the ground, but it was total mess. I could not read the phase trace at all. It was completely just messy, noisy, so I had to get up in this lift and take this measurement. Okay, so step one, get the measurements, equidistant, same delay locator setting, and now we can do some work with them. So I've already offset my sub trace here a little bit just to make these guys about match. Now, you know that all of this work is so much easier if you have some kind of comparison. If you are just looking at an abstract measurement, how do you know what to do? Well, you need a comparison. So I'm going to load this target. It has a very conservative little bump here in the low end, and I use this target often when I'm just doing something close in that should not have very much room gain. Okay. So what I used to do in the past is now I would just do a level offset and hit the target with my solo traces. And then I would, do the alignment and turn everything on. And then the summation between the two would be too high. And then I'd have to go back and change everything. Well, not change everything. I'd have to fix the level offsets. So if you want to try and get ahead of that problem, here's one way you could approach that. So I've got my target here set so that it is basically matching my main through the mids here. So how do I set the level so that when I turn main and sub on together, that they will, sum and make a really nice summation that hits my target like this, right? So I'm hoping that where they're matched, they'll go up like this and hit the target. One way you might do this is once you're matched here with one of your traces, then you can offset your target by 6 dB, and now find where main and sub match. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit in the low end here. And I've already done some work on this. So let's look at the sub. Imagine that this was somewhere else, like over here. Okay, so now they main and sub, red and blue, do not match on the target. So I need to play around with this a little bit until I find a place where they match. So I offset the target 6 dB, and then I just adjusted the sub level until these guys all matched. Okay, so I'll reset my target here. And now I can be pretty certain that if I have matching phase, where I have matching magnitude, that I will get 6 dB of summation and I will hit this target. Okay? And notice I'm not looking at every frequency, but I'm just kind of focusing on this one place where I know for sure that I will get 6 dB of summation if I have matching phase. Okay, so I've set some levels to start with, and now there are two ways that I know that you could take the next step. We could either set our filter by looking at the magnitude, or we can set our filter by looking at the phase. And I guess if you're really smart, you could do both at the same time, but I'm not very good at that. And I don't know the best way. Honestly, I'm going to show you two ways today that you could go about this, because I don't know the best way to do this, but I do know where I want to end up. I want to end up with matching phase and then a result summation that hits my target. And I would like to have, I have this target for how much overlap I want. And that's it. How I get there, I'm not sure exactly. We're going to look at delay, polarity, filter slope, topology. There are all these little details that you can play around with, and that's the fun of this, If this is not fun for you, then, you're probably not watching this video, or you're watching this video and you're hating it. But this kind of puzzle is really fun for me, so I like to play around with this stuff. Okay, so first we're going to look at starting with the magnitude, and then we're going to look at starting with the phase instead. So let's see if I can hit a target overlap that I'm looking for. How do we do that? Well, right now we have 100% overlap, right? There's nowhere where the main is playing and the sub is not also playing, within 10 dB. I'm going to insert a cursor here. Why is this cursor here? Well, I'm going to go back to my main. I'm going to offset it by 24 dB. Now, I go into this process in a lot more detail in Phase Alignment Science Academy. So if this thing is interesting for you, then I definitely recommend you check out Phase Alignment Science Academy. I'll put a link to it below this video. Okay, 24 dB offset, wrong direction, minus 24. Okay. See how the magnitude traces are matching when I put in a negative 24 dB offset. That's why I put this cursor here. Okay, now let's go in the other direction, plus 24 dB. And there is nothing here. But I'm going to move one of these cursors down to a specific location. Where am I going to put it? Well, I want it to be 2 octaves away. So where is this cursor? It's at 136 hertz. So 136 divided by 4 is 34. So I'll set my cursor at 34, and now I have 2 cursors showing me exactly a 2 octave span. So now all I need to do is put my filter in and drag it up until these 2 guys match here. And I don't even have to guess. I can estimate it pretty closely. How do I do that? Well, all I need to know is this distance here. Okay? And I could just look at my cursor, but I can also drag this guy down here, and then I can look at the delta magnitude over here, and it says 20 dB. Now, do I have any filters over here that will create an attenuation of 20 dB? Not exactly, but I have 24. So let's try a Linkwitz-Riley 24 dB per octave filter. Where are we going to put it? Not at 34 hertz, which is where this cursor is right now, but 1 octave above that, right? Because it's 24 dB per octave. So once it gets down 1 octave, it'll be down 24 dB. Now, we know we want 20, not 24, so it's not going to be exact, but it'll be pretty close. So I insert this filter, and then I can just grab the handle and I'm going to move it around until these 2 points match. Okay, pretty good. So that says 59 hertz. I'm just going to round up to 60 because I like round numbers. Okay, and now I can put this other guy back at, I think it was at 136. And now I can take my offset off. So now I have the magnitude that I want. This is my 2 octave overlap, and I'm happy about this. But when I turn on the sum, this black trace, it's not quite as good as I wish it would be. And notice that we have a polarity inversion in here. I forgot about this. This is my mistake. So let's take this out. So this is our current sum. And so maybe this is helping us, right? But I'm going to leave it out for a second. So I'm going to turn off the sum. Okay, so we're approaching this from magnitude. We've got the overlap that we want, but let's switch over to looking at the phase. Okay, red versus blue, we obviously do not have matching phase here yet. So what are we going to do to fix this? Well, we have some different options, but let's just look at an option with delay first. So you notice that this phase looks kind of weird. That's because I've adjusted this reference here. So this black line is adjusting the reference, and that would be like if you could adjust your delay locator in Smart for both traces at the same time, right? So I'll put this back to where it started at the beginning. This is how the phase started out looking. So now it's probably more clear to you that this blue trace is steeper than this red trace. But to make this easier to look at, I pull the reference this way so I can try and get the entire phase span of this. So now I can see the entire blue phase trace here. So how much delay do I need to make this work? Well, I'll just pick a frequency here in about the center of this crossover region, 70 hertz. And I need to find out what the distance is here. So let's put both of these cursors at 70 hertz. And I can see that the delta phase over here is 180 degrees. So let's just start with the polarity inversion, and at least we'll have one frequency that is aligned, but nothing else is aligned, right? And let's put these cursors back where they were. So I think it was 35 and 136. So we know we need to add delay to the main, but now that we're aligned at one frequency here, now that we can just sort of move this phase trace around this 70 hertz frequency like a teeter-totter. So what is the period of 70 hertz? So I've set this up already over here. So 1000 divided by 70 gives us the time in milliseconds, 14.28. So let's put 14.28 milliseconds into our delay. And there we go. We're aligned here. That looks pretty good. And you'll see that I'm going to keep playing around with this reference so we can see everything on the screen. So we're aligned up here, and that's great, but we're not aligned here. So let's try one more variation. Instead of a full period at 70 hertz, let's try a half period. So I have this variable t that I've created, which is 14.28. I'll just divide that by 2 to get the half period, which is 7.14. So let's try 7.14 milliseconds. And now since I only went half a period around, then I'll take out the polarity inversion. And there we go. So we're a lot closer now at least, right? So we're aligned up through here until we get to about this region down here. So I don't know the best way to solve this, but I know one thing we could do is potentially put in a second order all-pass filter in our main down here to push this phase. We need this guy to go up this way, right? So let's put in a second order all-pass filter just starting at like 20 hertz. So I'll insert it and we see this red trace goes up closer, right? So I can grab this handle here and I'll start pulling this up. There we go. We see them get it into even better alignment. And there we go. What if I make this a little bit more narrow? Is that better? Maybe. Okay, and now let's just say this is good enough for this option. So this is the option where I started with the magnitude and tried to get the phase aligned using delay, polarity, and one all-pass filter. So let's take a look at the magnitude. Let's look at the sum. Okay, we're doing pretty well. We are aligned through the crossover region here. And now I can do is store this. So I already have it stored here. and looking at it against my target here. So that's great. So close this. Now let's look at the second option. So let's take all this stuff out. Take this out, take the delay out, and take the all-pass filter out. Okay. Just looking at solo traces here again. Let's switch over to the phase. Let's start with the phase. And let's get to a place where we can just see all of our blue subtrace. So we know that the blue trace is a lot steeper than the red trace. And let's go back to our Linkwitz-Riley 24 where we just were. Let's tune that guy back on. Okay, that's not steep enough. So just for fun here, if we're starting with the phase trace, let's see if we can find a filter that is a better match for our phase. So let's go up to Linkwitz-Riley 36. Okay, and I can't see everything on the screen, so I'll adjust this reference. Okay, so it's a little bit hard to tell, but to me it looks like this blue trace is still steeper than this red trace. So let's go up to LR 48. Oops. Oh, that's cool. Not only do they look like they're a much better match in terms of slope now, but they're very close to each other. Okay, I like that a lot. So I'm going to pull the reference back over here to see if I can get this entire thing on the screen again. Okay, so now I'm pretty close to being matched in terms of phase, but now I've screwed up my magnitude, right? Now I need to set this. You remember when we started the other way, then we had to look at the phase. Now we started with the phase, so now we got to check on the magnitude. So let's do that offset again of 24 dB. And we're not matched at this frequency, right? If I want to hit 2 octaves, then this is what I need to hit. And so at this point, maybe you would decide, well, I'm okay with a little bit less overlap. And so you would just move on with your life, and that's great. But if I want to be picky, I want to say, you know what? I really want to try and get 2 octaves. So let's see if we can do that. So I just need to grab this filter and I'll start pulling them down until they match. There we go. So we're at 46 Hertz. Okay, great. Taking off this offset. So now we're back to a 2 octave overlap. Now that I've adjusted my cutoff frequency, now my phase will have moved a little bit. So let's see what happened here. These guys are pretty far off. Let me try to hit a polarity inversion and see if that gets us closer. It does. Let's change my reference so that I get everything on the screen. And now, what do I need to do to add some delay and make all of these guys match? Well, just looking here at the high end, I can tell that this is about 180 degrees. So how do I span this 180 degrees phase gap with some delay? Well, we can use the phase delay formula. So we'll do 180 degrees divided by 360 divided by this frequency that we're looking at, which is around 136 Hertz, multiply by 1,000 to get milliseconds, and we get 3.67 milliseconds. So let's put in 3.67 milliseconds of delay. And now watch this red guy. We're hoping that he's going to go down like this, right? Okay, so we're aligned at this frequency here. And so maybe this is good enough and we could just back off. But remember, we have this other solution. We have this all-pass filter that we could use to like push this guy up a little bit. And I don't know if this is the best solution, but let's try it out. So we'll put this in here. That's too much. Let's take it back down to 25 Hertz and maybe a little bit lower Q. I don't know if a lower Q or a higher Q is better here. Okay, and so maybe we say that that's good enough. We could, keep playing with this all day, find another solution, make lots of little adjustments here. But now through the entire crossover region, we are definitely within the corridor of 60 degrees. So we head back over to our magnitude. We take a look at the sum. And now that we're aligned, we could even, try some different filters that we know have the same amount of phase shift. So we could try a Butterworth 48, for example. Okay, and we would get, a slightly different result. But let's stick with the LR48 for now. And now we have a little bit too much sum. We're going over our target. So I'll head over to the sub and I'll turn this guy down by 1 dB, minus 17. There we go. A nice match. Okay, so now we have two things we can compare. I'm going to zoom into the low end a little bit here. So the red one is the one we did before. A less steep slope, LR24, with more delay, 7.45 milliseconds. And then this guy we just created has double the steepness, LR48, but less delay, only 3.1 milliseconds of delay. And it seems to have a better match here with hitting our target. So that's why if you looked at this article, you may have noticed there's just a little paragraph here where it says that we inserted this filter, and that's why we decided to insert this specific filter, as we were just working quickly in the field. But I threw this together and I noticed, okay, we have a good alignment here and it hits our target trace, so let's go with it. Okay, so this is a couple of ways that you could find a crossover alignment in the field if you need to insert some kind of a filter and reduce the amount of overlap and improve your alignment. We looked at how you could start by first just looking at the magnitude relationship and then adjust the phase from there. And then we looked at another method where you might first try to find a good phase match and then do some other adjustments to the magnitude from there. But either way, it's this constant, this puzzle of finding all the little pieces that go together correctly. So I hope this was helpful for you. Please let me know if you have any ideas for me. I'm always trying to improve my methods. And if you have any questions, please post them below this video. All right, thanks. Sound design.